Tanner Castor standing by with Kienan Dixon of the Summit League. South Dakota State an 82-65 defeat today. Probably lost to a better team and a team who potentially could get to the Final Four. I
mean, this Iowa State team, if you didn't believe that they could do that, I think tonight kind of proved that. What they did over the weekend at the Big 12 tournament, dominant, rolling through all three teams, beating Baylor, beating Houston by 28 points. I think a lot of teams and a lot of fans can say, hey, you know, a team coming in after a really good tournament, maybe not as good in the NCAA tournament. Sometimes they stumble after they kind of get hot through their league tournament. This Iowa State team is for real. TJ Otzelberger had that team ready to go. And I mean, the game plan to kind of shut down William Kyle III on the inside, they were double teaming everything in the interior. Some of the zone defense that they played, Jim Boeheim is somewhere watching this, and he was like, I love this, that someone is actually employing the zone defense in the way that they did.
And it's kind of a trap zone defense.
It is, yeah.
It's not something they lay back in and you can attack them. They attack you, which you don't see a lot on defense. And I think that kind of shocked the Jacks to open the game.
It did, and there were times, I mean, so much of the Jacks game is predicated on Will Kyle III pick and roll with Zeke Mayo. And a lot of that happens, and it works really well when it works really well, right? But tonight it didn't, and a lot of that was due to that trap. They were double teaming Zeke off of every single pick, and if he could get it to Will, good. But if not, I mean, there were times, I think we had 3 or 4 kick balls in the first 5 minutes of the game because Zeke was trying to split the defense with a low pass.
I'll give Zeke some credit. He struggled in the early going, but I think he eased into the game. He looked good in the second half. Will Kyle impressed me too with the way he competed.
He did.
It was not a game that he owned from the start, but he stuck with it. I wanted to talk for a second about the crowd, which I thought was interesting. Going back to the Summit League, and you hear all these things about how the Sea of Blue kicks in gear and gets the South Dakota State Jackrabbits going. That was a heck of a crowd for Iowa State, and you felt that energy from the opening tip, and it was almost like the team kind of rode that.
Yeah. I mean, it was a majority Iowa State crowd, and I think that was kind of expected coming in. They're the 2 seed. There's a lot of hype around that team. A bigger school, bigger state, right? So there's some advantages to that, but both teams really traveling a similar distance to get here to Omaha. I think the fan bases love that opportunity, and there was a good amount of blue out there, and a little more blue for South Dakota State than I think Drake, but you know, it's still a good atmosphere. I think a good opportunity to play just down the road.
No question. When you looked at what the Jacks did defensively, I actually was kind of impressed. I think that there were times where Iowa State got out in transition, but a lot of times in possessions, Iowa State just made shots. And when they moved the ball, they didn't miss open looks.
Yeah, there were times tonight where you were kind of watching, and it almost felt like the Nuggets from last year, where you defend really well for 23 and a half seconds, and then Jokic just throws up a prayer. Well, it was kind of like that. I mean, South Dakota State, they would play really good defense for 25 seconds in a possession, and then someone's going to hit a step-back, fadeaway one-footer, you know, that's just falling away, and it's from the elbow. You can't defend that. I thought Kalen Gary played great defense on their best player for Iowa State.
Mochilovic, I want to say?
Yeah, Milan Mochilovic, and I thought he played really good defense, but there were a lot of times where he was kind of baited into fouls, and Mochilovic was just hitting shots. It's hard to beat a guy that's hitting shots.
All that we've mentioned, and yet in the second half, there's a Matt Mims 3 that if it goes down, it's a 3-point game.
Yeah.
South Dakota State was right there with one of the best teams in the country.
They were. And it seemed like every time they kind of got back into a spot where they could strike within one possession, I mean, they had it down to 4 in the second half, early on in the second half, and they were right there. But it just was a little bit too much, and I think South Dakota State played a lot better tonight when they were playing in that half-court offense, when they were able to establish that offense that we see so much from them.
Yeah.
But once the game started getting a little track meaty, that's when Iowa State took off and had a lot of success. You saw those big high-flying alley-oops and that transition game, and all of a sudden it's a 10-0 run and another kill for Iowa State.
Exactly. That's what impressed me about them is they just didn't get rattled.
Yeah.
Every time South Dakota State threw a punch back, they took it and ran with it. They are a well-coached team.
They are.
I don't think I actually can say I haven't seen a team in person who plays that hard defensively and moves that well in offense. They don't take breaks.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of teams that do that get really tired.
Exactly.
It's hard to sustain over the course of a season. It's a long season.
Yes.
And for them to continually do that and just hound defenses or hound offenses, and then also get back on on offense and in transition and still run. Like, a lot of teams will try and slow down, right? But you don't tend to see that what we saw tonight. And I think whatever TJ Altsberger is doing out there at Ames is working, and it's working really well.
Absolutely. We'll sum it up here, get back to the Summit League. What do you think the Jacks showing will be when the national media looks at what they did in this tournament?
I think it's tough because, nationally you kind of look at what they do in this tournament, right? In their one game.
Which is unfair.
I think it is.
To a degree.
It's unfair to a degree, but it's also fair, right? Because what you're looking at is who's going to compete for a national title. South Dakota State didn't show that they could compete for a national title tonight. And that was true because of the score, and that's what it comes down to. And as a 15 seed, you're not really given that expectation, right? I think, no one was talking about South Dakota State coming into the game. I think if South Dakota State played a closer game and it kind of came down to it, or if they won, all of a sudden everyone's talking about them, right? I mean, where did Oral Roberts really make their name? And that was
fair point.
Yeah, when they were the 15 seed and they upset Ohio State, right? So that's where it happens, and I think it's just a step in the rung of getting to the Final Four for an Iowa State team that South Dakota State will probably be looked at as, but I think for you and I, as people who cover this team and know this team and the program, and obviously know the league and how difficult it was to win this year. I mean, 12-4 to win the regular season in the Summit League. The last two seasons, we had an undefeated team. So it's a little bit different, and it's a very competitive league, and I think it's going to be very competitive next year as well.
Let's end with that. Next season coming back for South Dakota State. They've got some nice pieces.
Yeah.
Zeke Mayo is probably coming back. Will Kiley's probably coming back, and they've got some youngsters who've looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Would you put South Dakota State as the favorite heading into next season right now?
I think so. I mean, it's the nature of the NCAA and the college sports landscape as it stands right now, and everything can change. I mean, we saw North Dakota last year versus North Dakota this year, all of a sudden being the third place team in the Summit League as opposed to, the ninth place team. So it's it can change in a flash, and it happens really quick. We have a lot of teams that have coaches that are going into their third season, and that third season can be where you make a jump. And we saw it with Kansas City this year with year 2 with Marvin Menzies, and they made a jump, massive jump, all the way up to second place in the Summit. Chris Crutchfield here in Omaha, right on the other side of town. Yeah, and he made his team into a real contender. Jeff Wilburn at Denver, I think they're going to have an opportunity to build on some things as well. And then you can't forget up north at Grand Forks, right? Paul Sather, North Dakota State. I think there's just a wealth of talent and ability and coaches that know how to recruit, that have a lot of success. Anything can happen, right? Listening
to them in their press conferences last week at the Summer League, there wasn't one coach who I did not sit back and go, that guy seems like he has a plan.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. And it kind of showed with the way that the league is starting to play out, has a lot of depth to it.
It is.
And there's the showings that these teams have had in this tournament, I think adds to what the Summer League can become.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's exciting to see going forward, and we'll kind of see where the league goes in terms of basketball. And I think, again, it's going to be very competitive. Johnny Tower is something going over in Minneapolis, or St. Paul, I should say. And obviously you can't forget ORU. Like it's every team at this point is really good and competitive, and every team could be that team that's playing here in March.
South Dakota State comes up short today, 82-65. We'll end with this. Give us your Final Four picks and your national champion.
I don't have my bracket in front of me. I could tell you who my national champion is, and that is UConn. I think that
Me too.
They're unbelievable. I understand that they lost their core key group from last year, but you have a team that has been there. You have a team that has a ton of success this year coming back, and the Big East only got 3 teams into the tournament, but man, they are good, really good teams. So I think UConn, Marquette in some other region as well. Like there's just some really good teams out there. It's fun. This is the best time of year.
Absolutely. You're here to hear first. UConn going to win it all. Again, the Jacks, they come up short, but a good showing for the league and a lot to look forward to in Big Blue Nation in South Dakota for the years to come.